Hey guys, so I mentioned in my faith and mental health care video that I am not exactly a fan of religious charities. I got some positive responses to making a video specifically about this topic during my premiere, and it's something that I'm passionate about, so let's just get into it. So I have 5 main issues with religious charities: religious obligation or contingency, taxation, usage of funds, motivations, and bigotry or refusal of services. I will make a brief disclaimer that I'm sure there are organizations that don't fit into any of these categories, but they are a minority, and if you know one, I'm going to be real honest, I'm not interested in hearing about it in the comments, as I still have zero interest in supporting any religious organization, and I will choose a secular version of whatever given charity that I may be donating to at the time. This is simply to say, yes, I'm sure they don't all suck. No, I will still not support them because I do not support religion. Also, please note, I will be mentioning specific charities in this video, and I absolutely do not support the harassment of their teams, social media accounts, or volunteers. This video exists to support the funding of secular charities over religious ones, not to attack anyone running these groups. And on that note, there will also be a link to some secular charities that I've personally donated to in the description if you'd like to check them out. Okay, so first category. This is probably my biggest issue regarding religious charities personally. Many religious charities only provide help on the basis of the people they're supporting doing one of the following: sitting through sermons or otherwise participating in religious practice, providing services that are Christ-focused, meaning those that they support must either already be Christian or willing to convert, or not belonging to certain communities, mainly the LGBT community, or willing to denounce that part of who they are. People who are in need of receiving charitable services are often in a position in which saying no is not an option. Sure, you could say no, but would you rather not have a house after a disaster, or would you rather follow someone else's religion? Would you rather not have food, or would you rather listen to a sermon every week? It's not much of a choice. While obviously the people running these organizations view conversion as helping, this is still a very manipulative way to run what's supposed to be a charity. It's less of help for help's sake and more of a trade. I give you shelter, food, therapy, etc., and you convert. I recently came across a charity called Crazy 8 Ministries. Their goal is to provide counseling and resources to families in crisis and poverty. However, looking at their page for counseling, it reads as follows. Quote, "Our goal in counseling is to search out wisdom from God's word to address things that come up in counseling and encourage individuals through the hope that comes from a relationship with the Father. All Crazy 8 counselors are certified biblical counselors, not licensed therapists, who may volunteer their time to us. Our services are free, but donations may be given to the ministry in an offering box inside our front door or through our website if you choose. We help clients to foster their own relationship with the Lord through homework assigned during each counseling session that is applicable to their current circumstances. Homework is vital in the counseling process as it is to our own intimacy with God that will bring healing, restoration, peace, and talking with the counselor alone will not bring the change the way he does." End quote. As well as stating, quote, "Did you know mental, emotional, and spiritual instability is the #1 cause of crime, domestic violence, drug addiction, and homelessness? This is why we also considering our free counseling services a poverty prevention program for our community." End quote. While I can already hear comments going, well, yeah, of course, an organization with ministry in their name will focus on religious counseling, this neglects the point of if this should be considered in the space of a charity or rather just simply a church. Tacking on spiritual instability to reasons people are impoverished and experiencing violence or addiction is so woefully dishonest. It's actually true that countries with the lowest rates of literally all of these things are also some of the most irreligious countries. And while correlation doesn't equal causation, it's quite clear that lack of religiosity is not exactly a factor in if someone is addicted to drugs. It's also worth noting that a certified biblical counselor is not necessarily the same thing as a licensed therapist or counselor. And while some biblical counselors are also licensed therapists, they explicitly state that theirs are not. However, despite this group itself directly stating its goal is to help people form a relationship with God, which they falsely to believe a solution to poverty and drug addiction, whilst also lacking to offer real mental health professionals, they are tax exempt and treated as a charity. To receive support from them or groups like them, you must already be religious or willing to convert, and you will likely not be receiving treatment from a mental health professional but rather a spiritual leader. What real benefit is being provided here other than one to their own religion? I will note, this charity actually does provide other resources beyond biblical counseling, so let's take a look at that. They offer 2 different housing programs, one that I think is honestly fine, and one that, again, is contingent upon religious belief. To be fair, I will share the one that I take no issues with first. This program is called Stay to Save, and it lists its goals as such. Quote, "Our mission is to help people transition into a place of housing sustainability, offering them affordable housing while simultaneously accumulating personal funds to assist in their next phase." End quote. This is essentially an affordable housing program. It allows people to build up credit and financial history, obviously have a house, and establish savings. I admittedly have no issues with this, so again, to be fair, I'm breaking up the negative with some positive. If the whole thing was run this way, even if it was openly Christian, they would not be in this video. However, unfortunately, their other housing program unfortunately falls into many of the same pits as their counseling. Its mission is listed as such. Quote, mission, to come alongside families in their broken circumstances, offering them hope and help in Jesus by fully equipping them practically and spiritually for complete rehabilitation and empowered living. Our empowerment program, the most sought-after phase, is broken into 4 6-month progressive semesters, each semester building on the completed previous one. Each resident helps develop their own individual spiritual plan, parentheses ISP, and works one-on-one weekly with both a counselor and case manager to ensure program success and victorious living. Main objectives: establish mental/emotional/spiritual well-being, establish physical well-being, establish financial well-being, pursue education/career opportunities and advancement, establish parental health, secure reliable transportation/housing, understand stewardship/basic life skills, length of stay up to 2 years, end quote. To be completely fair, this does still offer a good amount of support. While I think the counseling services frankly should not exist in their current state, this program still presents people with housing, a case manager, transportation, and life skills. However, it still relies on compliance with their religion, and makes religiosity a focus, enough that it's their main mission statement to essentially be conversion. They don't use the word conversion, of course, but that's what it is. Establishing a relationship with their God in order to receive housing is again a trade of I give you a house and you give me conversion. While again, I'll restate, I genuinely do not believe groups like this to be intentionally manipulative or vindictive in any way. What this essentially is only valuing people's fundamental rights and safety if they choose to comply with your specific religious beliefs. I can't say I know how they'd respond if an atheist or a Muslim or a Jewish person needed support. Maybe they would change their program to still allow them housing without the religious aspect, but considering the repeated focus on it, I doubt it. And it's also important to note that charities like this are tax exempt. And this, in my personal opinion, along with, yes, churches and other places of worship being tax exempt, is a problem with separation of church and state. An explicitly religious organization is being given favor in finances. Religious institutions and charities are actually not even required to report their income, while secular 501c3 organizations are required to report it. This not only extends to churches, but any religious charity as well, including the one that we just talked about. Why should an organization that's main mission is conversion be essentially subsidized by the government, but also granted favor in terms of reporting? To sum up this section, charities like the ones we discussed's main goal is conversion, and any benefits that come with it are contingent on participating in their religion. They are not only treated as charitable while providing very minimal actual support, and in some charities' cases no support, but receive special treatment from the government for functioning this way. The next thing I'll move on to is denial of services and bigotry. And yep, you guessed it, we're going to talk about the Salvation Army. While the Salvation Army has recently done quite a bit of work to improve their image, the actual issues with their practices remain consistent. For context, the Salvation Army is an evangelical charity based in the UK that is known by most people to be a man in front of a Walmart or a Safeway ringing a bell and asking for donations and a little red pot, usually around Christmas. They provide social services, veteran services, prison services, among others, and they run a multitude of homeless shelters and food banks as well. However, the Salvation Army has been known to refuse services to both gay and trans people. They've also thrown away donated toys that they deem to be satanic, not even giving them to other organizations if they didn't feel comfortable distributing them themselves. Unsurprisingly, the Salvation Army views homosexuality as a sin. They've repeatedly denied services to gay people seeking them, and in 2004, the Salvation Army also stated that they would leave New York if they were not exempt from a law requiring them to provide benefits to gay employees' partners. While they were not given a formal exemption, Mayor Michael Bloomberg chose to not enforce these laws on the organization, which was later upheld in court. They also sought for Bush to exempt them from anti-discrimination laws, however, this was denied. Alongside this, in 2008, a trans woman named Jennifer Gale was found dead outside of one of their churches in Austin, Texas, which is actually where I'm from, so yikes. And this is widely believed to be due to her being refused housing in the shelter. Between 2010 and 2013, a section of their website read as follows. Quote, Scripture forbids sexual intimacy between members of the same sex. The Salvation Army believes, therefore, that Christians whose sexual orientations is primarily or exclusively same-sex are called upon to embrace celibacy as a way of life. There is no scriptural support for same-sex unions as equal to or an alternative to heterosexual marriage. Likewise, there is no scriptural support for demeaning or mistreating anyone for any reason of his or her sexual orientation. The Salvation Army opposes any such abuse. In keeping with these convictions, the services of the Salvation Army are available to all of those who qualify without regard to sexual orientation. End quote. This statement essentially says, being gay is a sin, but if you're celibate, will help you, which is essentially what Mormons do, and you're welcome to go watch my Mormon video to hear more about that. This again comes back to what I mentioned at the start of the video. You will only receive services if you follow our religious beliefs. Well, I guess this is like a 100th of a millimeter better than like just flat out denying services. It also leaves room to go, nuh-uh, I don't believe you, and deny services. As well as, you shouldn't have to be celibate when you're gay to receive food to begin with, nor follow anyone else's religious beliefs in general. There is a long, long list of shitty things done by the Salvation Army, so I will provide a little list and we'll move on. A Salvation Army bell ringer holds a sign stating if you support gay rights, please do not donate, referring LGBT individuals to conversion therapy groups, removing support for anti-bullying groups whenever it advocated for queer students, expressing public disapproval over the repeal of a British bill banning the promotion of homosexuality, being actively supported in their messaging by Focus on the Family, whose entire function is to basically make life impossible for queer people, proselytizing during a government-funded social services event, directly contributing to the displacement and removal of Aboriginal Australian children, being complicit in the sex abuse of thousands of Aboriginal Australian children that are sheltering with them, stating they will not apologize for being white in response to questions about their positions on critical race theory. There's actually more, but we'll leave it there. And yes, this organization is still tax exempt and is still regularly given money directly by the government. The last thing that I want to talk about is a lot smaller, and that is diversion of funds. I'll be honest, this part is like 2 sentences. There's not a lot to say about it, but basically a lot of these organizations take money that could be used to tangibly help people, such as providing housing, food, etc., and puts it into conversion instead. This can be seen through a lot of mission trips, as well as charities that do things like pass out Bibles during their services. Or in the case of Crazy 8, the charity that we talked about at the beginning, using funds to hire biblical counselors instead of real therapists, which I'm sure is more expensive, but nonetheless is also more effective. This is also something I talked about briefly in my addiction video, in which instead of providing services such as detox or rehab, money is essentially put towards conversion, things such as sermons, Bibles, biblical worksheets, etc., etc. Ultimately, like I stated at the beginning, I don't believe that any of these organizations have bad intentions. But nonetheless, they are, for one, doing a lot less than they could be doing because they are putting so much of their energy into conversion instead of genuinely helping people. But also because they're helping less people than they could be, because it's contingent on believing in their religion. And I will say, if I was ever in a situation where I needed services from a charity like this, I would just decline it. I'm not going to be converted or put up with people preaching to me for any reason whatsoever. But a lot of people aren't in that situation, and a lot of people are in worse situations than I've been in or ever will be in. If you find a charity whose message resonates with you, that they're doing something that you think could really help, and it's a religious charity, look for a charity that does the same thing, but doesn't have that baggage with it. Not all bigoted religious charities have it straight on their page like Salvation Army used to. Sometimes you have to seek services to find out. And even if they're not bigoted, I don't really think anyone should be supporting a charity that's main goal is conversion over help. Or, to be completely honest, that has conversion as part of their goal at all. That's all I got today. Reminder to check out the secular charities that I linked in my description, and I'll see you all in the next one. Hade.
I stare at the populace in prayer.